Hi everyone, and welcome to Modernization FX, a space for us to talk about the modernization projects with partners and their offerings. Today, I am here with Jarek from SoftServe. Jarek is a AWS ambassador, and he's the AWS COE, Center of Excellence lead for SoftServe. Hi, Jarek.
Hello, everyone, and thank you, Ricardo, for having me here. It's a great pleasure and opportunity.
Jarek, so SoftServe is a well-established partner of AWS and is working a lot on modernization. Why don't you talk to me about SoftServe, what you do, your team, your role, your offerings?
Yeah, of course. So SoftServe is a premier tier services partner for AWS. So it's actually the highest grade that you can get in a partnership with AWS. We partnered with AWS since 2014. Currently, we have 12 AWS competencies, a number of service delivery programs as well. These that are responsible for or helping with the modernization, especially the service delivery for Amazon EKS and AWS Lambda.
So how do you work with your customers? What does your team do?
We are also a massive fan of Graviton. So modernization for us is kind of like a key component that we engage with our customers. And I have multiple teams that are working on repeatable solutions. And when we talk about the repeatable solution, it's truly end-to-end repeatable solution that we can implement in exactly the same way every single time we try to do it for the customer. So one of the teams is responsible for purely application modernization that is building the not only the platforms but also the assessments for our customers that are trying to go through the modernization journey, or they're actually considering moving into, for example, containers or other serverless services as well.
Okay. And how does Graviton play a role in this picture?
So every single modernization for us, every component that we kind of like design or the solution has got the Graviton component in it, because we believe that Graviton is a great processor. It gives a lot of benefits. It's very performant. It's very cheap. Not very cheap, but compared to other vendors, is kind of like it gives the cost benefit for our customers. Okay. But the most important factor for us is the performance of that specific CPU, and also a number of services that are supported by default by Graviton. Like, for example, Amazon RDS, Aurora, these kind of things is just like as easy to turn to Graviton just by flipping the instance type and job done, and you start saving money.
So you have cost optimization and the performance advantage.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay. Thanks for that. So when customers start their modernization journey, let's say because they are considering migration, or maybe because they have done a migration previously and now are considering to modernize their applications, their workloads, what is the typical journey for them, and where does SoftServe come into play in this approach and during this journey?
So what we actually recognize is what you mentioned is kind of like a two type of different customers. One customer is the customer who wants to migrate to AWS, and during this migration they want to modernize part of the workloads. The other customers are the customers that already established in AWS, and they kind of like they never actually gone into any modernization journey. There is also like maybe a third type of the customer that is kind of like in between. They experimented something with modernization. They already have some workload running on containers. Very likely that's going to be Amazon EKS. And they kind of like not sure what to do next, right? Or they, for example, don't see the benefits coming from the modernization. So they kind of like in a stalled position. These are mainly the enterprise customers. Okay. All of them, they suffer from more or less the same problem, is a lack of standardization, right? So they have multiple teams that are looking after their product portfolio. They're running some sort of the platforms by themselves. And if you look at this picture from like an organizational perspective, If you go to one product team, they may use one technology. If you go to another product team, they may use completely different technology. At the end of the day, the organization has got multiple standards, and these standards are kind of like established by the individual product team. Whether this is good or not, it's difficult to say. However, from the organizational perspective, where our enterprise customers, especially, or ISV customers are going to, is they trying to unify the standards, because that gives them the most control. That also helps them to keep the cost under control, because they don't spend money on the technology that they don't necessarily need. And for all these customers, we have multiple offerings. And one of the offerings is kind of like container strategy assessment. It's something where what we do for our customers which do not have the containers adoption yet. They don't really know where to start. In many cases, they run big monolithic applications, either still in the data centers or on EC2 instances, but they kind of like singleton and monolithic applications. For the customers that already run containers and they don't know really like what is the next step, how they can proceed with further modernization, or they don't see the full benefit, we have containers maturity assessment that is based on the well-architected framework. We reused a bit of the container lens for well-architected framework, but we adopted it to our needs to basically measure the maturity of the customers.
Okay, interesting. And so you have these offerings from SoftServe that assess basically the maturity, how the landscape is on the customer side of things. And then what happens? What does your team do? What do you do?
Yeah, so normally there is always like a follow-up step, right? So the customers, they understand where they are in their modernization journey. And the plan is basically to help them to build this standardization, help them to build, all the requirements, components that basically will create a platform. A lot of customers now, they're moving into the concept of the platform team. That was something that we recognized like over a year ago. And we built the SoftServe application modernization platform. That is a framework that supports this kind of like a concept of the platform team, platform development, and unified standards. So where we actually help the customers, we started building the platform that is based on Amazon EKS. So we basically embedded all the good practices into it and our unique experience as well. So the customer is getting a platform that is already well architected. And as a proof of that, where this platform is already on AWS Marketplace, and it's marked with the foundational technical review from AWS as well.
Okay. I understand also that the platform the acronym is SAMP, right?
Yes.
And is based on EKS Blueprints, which is a open source project from AWS.
Yeah, correct. So we were lucky to actually find the blueprints some time ago, because that's going to be about, I think, a year and a half, or at least like 2 years ago. And instead of basically creating our own vision of how to build EKS clusters from Terraform, we reused something that AWS ProServe already created and put on the Git repository. So we reused that component as a kind of like a module. And we when we talk about this platform, we adopted exactly the same modular way of building these platforms. So you can imagine that when we go to the customer, no customer will have exactly the same standards. Every single customer may use completely different tool set for monitoring, for alerting, log storage, for secrets and things like this. So what we actually do is like, we build this kind of like a baseline for the platform from these EKS blueprints, and we have them as what we call interchangeable components. So you can imagine that you're trying to build something from Lego bricks, and you build like a house, and you don't like a little component in your house wall that has different color. You want to change it. So in our case, it's as easy as just to take that Lego brick and put another one in. So for the platform implementation, we always pilot that with the customers, and we go through this phase with addressing all the integration components that need to be embedded into this platform. And at the end of the 4 weeks pilot, we also onboard the customer's application on top of that, so they actually see the benefits.
Okay, so this platform is actually deployed at the customers.
Yes.
And it it's running. It will be running once the production deployment is fully up. It will be running the customer's work.
Exactly. This is the ultimate goal, right? We want to give the customer the most of the benefits and the value in the 4 weeks window period. We don't want the customers to run the assessment for 4 weeks and then tell them, now you need to pay us $500,000 to get you somewhere. We want to basically give them this experience of modernization by moving some workloads on this platform. That also answers a lot of business questions and addresses a lot of business risks, because the customer already see like what potential efforts are required, whether it actually makes sense. Whether Amazon EKS is the right platform to go, because we also recognize this need, and a lot of customers use Amazon EKS not really understanding the ecosystem, or they don't have the specific requirements that would require to go into Amazon EKS. So we basically took exactly the same framework that we built for EKS, and we built the same platform for ECS and Lambda as well. So ECS is much more easier to be adopted, and for kind of like customers to see the benefits from containerization, like very fast, very, let's say, for cost optimized and things like this, let's just use ECS and see how much benefit it gives to the customer.
So basically, I understand that for customers that see their applications as process-based, so based on containers, maybe some of them prefer the Kubernetes world because they are familiar with that, because their teams are familiar with it, they love open source, and that's the way they want to go. And if otherwise they prefer something more, serverless based, they then opt for, or you suggest Amazon ECS as an orchestrator. Or the other way, if it's not containers based and not process based, basically it's event based, maybe AWS Lambda is the way to go, which you suggest.
Exactly. Right. We have some kind of like a established decision tree that we go with the customer, and we're trying to understand like what is the target platform the best suited for them. For AWS Lambda, we mainly target the API type of workloads, because there is a nice integration with API gateway, and Lambda is kind of like for this kind of like a specific workloads, I think is very well suited. But still, the concept is the same. Remember about this interchangeable components, right? Anything that we build and what we build for EKS, ECS, and Lambda comes with exactly the same kind of like a standardization. So the customer, by deploying our platform, they got already observability, logs, monitoring, secrets management, storage, and things like this, and security, which is probably the most important, and Graviton, of course.
Of course. All of this with SAMP, right? With your accelerator. Good, excellent. All right, so we've spoken about the infrastructure now, problems related to that, the options, your offering, your way of tackling the infrastructure. Now, why don't we talk about the applications? So what's SoftServe approach?
So for the application side of things, as I mentioned, from the platform perspective, we want to obviously onboard some of the applications, but sometimes the customers, they basically want to go through much bigger modernization journey, and they want to understand like it's not easy for them to, for example, modernize the application in 4 weeks, especially when the application is very legacy and has 1 million lines of code. So even for a person, one person or two, it's almost impossible to go and assess the code, especially when it's legacy. It may contain a lot of business logic inside, in such a short period of time. So we actually partner with AWS and Cast, and we as a partner, we utilize their tool set to help us to analyze more complex workloads. Obviously, for more kind of like a smaller workloads, we try to use whatever is available, like up to containers, for example, or porting assistance of any sort, like .NET or Graviton. And we kind of like trying to use this tool set. But when we have more complex applications, as I mentioned, we partner with Cast, and we utilize their software to help us with the assessment. Also, we have some cases where the customer has got the application, but the team that wrote this application, or the owners, they are no longer with the company. So nobody it's kind of like a bit of like a hot potato. Yeah. So everyone wants to, they don't want to hold it for a long period of time, if that makes sense. So we kind of like CAS allows us to run this SME less assessment, right? So we don't need really the customer experts to understand what is in that application. All we need is just the source code and CAS.
And what kind of information do you get? So tell me about this process.
So we get a lot of information from the code perspective. For example, some kind of like potential problems during the modernization, like for example, some legacy libraries. We see that, for example, there is hard-coded SQL statements that need to be kind of like extracted away. So CAS gives us like a lot of information about how the application is written, but also gives us the best recommendations, like what is the right way to approach this specific modernization.
Okay, so it provides you the picture, the as-is, yes, right, of the situation, applications running in different environments, I guess, not only clusters, Kubernetes or ECS or whatever, and also provides recommendations for fixing the problems.
Yes.
Does it help you also in approaching or moving towards a microservices-based architecture or similar?
Yeah, so basically the goal is like we want to break down the monolith, right? To understand the monolith, we need to understand the application code, extract the specific functions from the application, and trying to identify like which portion of the code is responsible for a specific function. So what we normally do during this modernization, obviously we have our solutions architect that are specializing in the specific, let's say, programming language. Let's use .NET as an example, and the CAS is helping them to understand. But it's ultimately it's up to them to kind of like build this modernization journey. And also in this case we have two type of the customers who want to run in iterations. So for example, keep the monolith running but start extracting the functions to like a microservices. So in this case, we kind of like build this microservices layer, but we build also the communication interfaces between the monolith and the application until the monolith is basically shrunk to the minimal size, and all the functions are already running as microservices. Second type of the customer is like basically just do it in one go, just re-architect everything. Yeah. So, but we need to keep this logic inside the application. From the application, we need to understand how it works. But why want you? So that's the customer. What they say. I want you to basically build the new vision of the architecture. And in many cases, they go like completely serverless.
Can you talk to me about maybe some real life customer examples where you used SAMP or CAS or both?
Yeah, SAMP is actually quite successful for SoftServe as an offering. We kind of like implemented it on multiple customers already. But what we actually, how SAMP is helping us is it helps us to accelerate the customer journey for modernization and making a faster decisions. Because there is kind of like a period where this decision makers, they are not really sure. They don't want to invest too much to realize that modernization doesn't make any sense. And this is where SAMP is helping them to understand like all these benefits from the modernization and also possibilities. So when we have one customer who's come from the ISV vertical, okay. And the quote from the customer is that by implementing the pilot with all the customizations that are required, but also onboarding the application on top of that, we accelerated the journey by at least 6 months. It's a huge company, and you can imagine that to build some kind of like a ways of standardization, it would take them months. Now we keep on going with this customer. We are already building them like a multiple platforms and the kind of like an automation system that will be building these platforms for the development teams.
Out of curiosity, what kind of what type of workload, what kind of customer, what area, what vertical was?
So that's the customer who does the networking and security of the networks, basically. Okay. So they have number of legacy products, okay, which you can imagine they're kind of like more or less like a virtual appliances, and they want to kind of like move that into more microservices based level where their platforms will be kind of like designated for the customers. But what they're ultimately looking for is to build these platforms in a repeatable way. So if they have a customer that needs to have some presence in different regions, they can replicate that and also interconnect these platforms together. So it's quite advanced and actually cutting edge project, because the technology that we used in this specific case and all the let's say integration components, they are really cutting edge.
Okay, so basically they are nicely, they have a product that is deployed on AWS, and with SAMP is basically the foundation of their product, and you help them migrate into SAMP, right?
Exactly. And also their developers, they understand, what they need. They kind of like have this freedom of not thinking about how the software is going to run or where the software is going to run. They just focus on the code and things like this. So they don't need to really understand like where do they get the secrets from, where the data is being stored. They only need to understand how to get this information.
Sure. Yeah? Because actually SAMP, like EKS Blueprints, supports the division of responsibilities, right? The separation of concerns between the platform team and the action.
Yes, and what is actually quite interesting about this separation of duties and on the platform level, any component that is deployed on a platform, it's quite important to mention this, is transparent for the application. So you can imagine that today the organization is using some solution for the secret store, and the next day they actually think about, maybe let's start using secrets manager or something like that, right? So what is going to change is only the layer on the platform level, which for the application is transparent, because application doesn't care where the secrets are being pulled from. It only needs to understand how to get the secret it needs.
Okay, so you keep the same interface.
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Okay, thanks. On the application side of things, do you have any modernization of the application? Do you have any example of a customer where you worked on with any tool, can be CAST or any other?
Yeah, so we have one of the financial customers, which they basically had a bit of legacy application, 1.6 million line of code. They needed the assessment, and also this is kind of like a combined deal because we implemented CAST and SAMP at the same time for them. So we kind of like run two streams together to help to understand and assess it further and make a decision faster about the modernization. So we actually, in 3 weeks, we assessed 1.6 million lines of code using CAST. We deployed the platform, and we basically accelerated the customer journey as well by them making a decision. And already when the pilot was completed, they already had some kind of like a business case for further modernization. Without CAST and without SAMP, they would not even get to that point to start thinking about building the business case for further modernization. Okay. And that's in 4 weeks.
Interesting. And what about any lessons learned or anything that you want to share on experience, anything that works fine, has worked fine, or could be improved in this kind of projects, modernization projects?
Yeah, so I think one interesting case is like, how do we understand refactoring in general? So in some ways we understand the refactoring that we basically changing the underlying, let's say, framework, and we run it on different, for example, platform. And .NET is a great example. So for example, we have .NET framework. And we modernize or refactor the application to run on .NET Core on Linux containers. What we actually see in this case, despite we changing the platform or the destination component, we do not change anything in this application. Meaning all the problems that existed at source, they will exist at the destination. What we will do we will just do like a what I use a term of reframeworking, not necessarily refactoring. So it's quite interesting because we have some of the examples with some of our customers where we actually see that proper refactoring and re-architecting the solution makes more benefits, and basically from the cost perspective and the project cost perspective, the difference is very little. because we're still focusing on development work, very heavy development work, regardless of whether we just change the framework or not. But also if there are some, if we talk about the applications that are running on the data centers, a lot of parts of this application, they need to change as well, because they need to be adopted to run in the containers in cloud world. Why not to just try and build a vision that is like properly architected for the cloud ready? I call it cloud ready because it's not really cloud native, but cloud ready application, which takes a lot of problems away. But this is what we also do with our customers during these type of assessments. Once we actually understand the application, we understand the effort, we can basically present two options. And in my experience, going into this more cloud ready or cloud native is not necessarily more expensive than just refactoring the application. But I understand the reason why customers are doing it. It's basically to optimize the workload cost. Yeah. Once they will get the benefit of cost optimization, in majority of cases, they already start thinking, even during this process, like, okay, what is the next step, or or how the target architecture is going to look like.
And so, do you see this as a trend? So, for customers deciding to modernize, either at the beginning or during the assessment phase?
Definitely, what I see the trend is during the migration. Not many customers now want to just lift and shift. They want to modernize some of the workloads as they go along, because they understand that these problems that they had, they will exist regardless of the destination platform of their choice. So they want to kind of like try to move into microservices, at least to have the, even if the application is monolithic, try to refactor it in a way to allow this application to scale and be resilient, highly available, and to maybe increase the security at the same time as well, which in AWS is super easy.
Good. Jarek, thank you very much. Very interesting, very informative. And yeah, thank you for staying with us today. And thank you for listening. If you want to know more about SoftServe, please click on the link below. Thank you.
Thank you very much.